Why does a shift in the global oil supply affect the price of your groceries? Or why does the central bank's interest rate suddenly change your monthly EMI? And why does a country growing this incredibly fast still struggle to create enough jobs? Welcome to This Explainer. Think of this as your Masterclass mentor session. We're going to map out the entire conceptual foundation of economics, giving you the exact tools to decode everything from your own personal budget to massive national policies. Let's get right into it.
Every single day you want to buy things, right? Maybe it's a new book, a great lunch, or just a mobile recharge. But you only have so much money in your pocket. We all know how fast a paycheck seems to just magically disappear. Your wants are virtually unlimited, but your resources, they're strictly limited. That single, everyday reality of having to choose how to spend your limited resources is the exact same problem facing global corporations and entire nations. They just deal with it on a much larger scale, juggling land, labor, and capital.
So, to make sense of all this, here is our roadmap for today. First, the science of scarcity. Second, designing economic systems. Third, measuring national income. Fourth, the GVA framework explained. And finally, India's economic horizon. Let's jump in.
Section 1, the science of scarcity.
You know, a lot of people think economics is just the study of money, but it's really not. As the British economist Lionel Robbins brilliantly defined it back in 1935, economics is actually the science of scarcity. Fundamentally, it's the study of choices. It's that constant relationship between our unlimited ends, our desires, and our scarce means, which have alternative uses. I mean, if resources weren't scarce, we wouldn't need to make choices at all, and we literally wouldn't need economics. Oh, and here is a quick exam alert for you. Positive economics looks at what this scarcity actually is, while normative economics argues what it should be. Definitely keep that in mind.
We generally observe these choices in two main ways: microeconomics and macroeconomics. It's exactly like looking at a forest. Microeconomics is like walking among the trees. You're studying individual units from the bottom up, maybe a consumer's behavior, a single firm, or a specific local market. Macroeconomics, on the other hand, is the view from an airplane. It's the top-down, aggregate view of the entire forest, looking at national income, overall inflation, and total unemployment. This big picture view was really pioneered by John Maynard Keynes during the Great Depression, basically when economists realized they needed a totally new way to understand why the entire forest was collapsing.
Section 2. Designing economic systems.
So, societies generally choose one of three systems to figure out how they're going to allocate all those scarce resources. In a pure market economy, private ownership absolutely rules, and the state does very little. The market just decides everything. Then you have a state or command economy where the government owns the resources and makes all the central decisions. But in reality, most of the world operates on a mixed economy. A mixed economy perfectly balances Adam Smith's invisible hand of free market efficiency with state intervention for public goods. A perfect example is India. You've got free markets driving the booming tech and auto industries, while the state simultaneously runs a massive public distribution system to ensure food security for the poor.
If we trace the evolution of these systems, we started with Adam Smith's laissez-faire capitalism way back in 1776. Then, the absolute devastation of the 1929 Great Depression brought us Keynesian economics, which proved the state really needed to intervene, and that birthed the mixed economy. Fast forward to 1990, the Washington Consensus pushed for developing countries to liberalize and rely heavily on free markets, which, by the way, heavily influenced India's 1991 reforms. By 2004, the Beijing Consensus showcased a totally different model of state-guided, pragmatic growth. And today, we're even seeing the Santiago Consensus emerging, which focuses much more on inclusive, sustainable development rather than just pure GDP growth.
Section 3. Measuring national income. Let's completely demystify how national income is actually calculated. It's simpler than it looks. Step 1 is gross domestic product, or GDP. That is the total value of all goods and services produced strictly within a country's geographic borders. But machines wear out over time, right? So if you subtract that wear and tear, which we call depreciation, from GDP, you get net domestic product, or NDP. Okay, step 2. What about citizens earning money abroad? You just add the net factor income from the rest of the world to your GDP, and that gives you gross national product, or GNP. Finally, step 3. Subtract depreciation from that GNP, and you arrive at net national product, or NNP.
And here is a massive exam alert for you focused learners out there. When economists formally say national income in official documents or reports, they are specifically referring to NNP at factor cost. It's a critical distinction that is so incredibly easy to miss, but it is the truest measure of what a nation actually earns from its productive efforts.
Section 4. The GVA Framework Explained.
Now, to really understand India's modern growth calculations, you have to look at GDP and GVA side by side. GDP is a demand-side measure. It looks at total expenditure across the whole economy. But gross value added, or GVA, is a supply-side measure. It looks at the actual value added by each individual sector, like agriculture, industry, or services, at every single stage of production. So, the crucial takeaway here is that while GDP is best for international comparisons, comparing India to Germany or Japan, GVA is the absolute preferred measure for analyzing sector-to-sector performance within the economy itself.
Let's clear up a highly confusion-prone area when calculating GVA, separating product taxes from production taxes. Product taxes, like VAT or excise duty, are linked directly to volume. You pay them per unit sold. Production taxes, on the other hand, are linked to the act of production itself, regardless of whether you produce 1 million units or absolutely nothing at all. Think of land revenue, stamp duties, or professional taxes. The government wants its cut either way. Understanding this specific difference is absolutely key to understanding how GVA ultimately translates into market price GDP.
Section 5. India's Economic Horizon.
Just look at this bold number, 7.6%. This represents India's real GDP growth rate for the 2023-24 financial year. And this isn't just some random statistic. It anchors us to the concrete reality that India is currently one of the fastest growing major economies in the entire world, actually accelerating from 7.0% the previous year. Looking a bit deeper into these estimates, we see real GDP at 7.6% and nominal GDP at 9.1%. Now notice the drop in nominal GDP growth compared to the previous year, which was over 14%. Because nominal GDP includes inflation, this drop actually signals a really positive trend, a significant moderation in inflation rates. We also see per capita income growing at a solid 6.8% in constant prices, which suggests a very real improvement in average living standards. But of course, growth doesn't happen in a vacuum, and India faces 4 major structural challenges going forward. First, hyperglobalization is slowing down, meaning export-led growth is getting much harder. Second, there's the massive cost of transitioning to clean energy. Third is the incredible disruption coming from artificial intelligence. And fourth, the absolute necessity of human capital development. If a country underinvests in health and education, its massive youth population, its demographic dividend, can very, very quickly turn into a demographic liability. I really want to spotlight this shocking reality from the IMF in 2024. 40% of jobs globally are exposed to AI disruption. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean all those jobs will just vanish, but it does mean massive upskilling is required, like immediately. It forces a complete shift away from rote learning and memorization toward critical thinking, creativity, and problem solving, the exact skills that AI simply cannot easily replicate. Which leaves us with this pretty provocative thought. How can developing nations, armed with these huge labor forces, turn AI automation from a threat into a tool for inclusive growth? Because economics teaches us that every challenge is really just a reallocation of scarce resources. So I challenge you to apply the foundational principles we've discussed today, from understanding market interventions to analyzing human capital, to solve the economic problems of tomorrow. Thank you for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the choices that shape our world.